I want to talk now about the tragedy that occurred in Baltimore. I mean, everyone was devastated by seeing the video of the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge over the Patapsco River. You know, I watched repeatedly, hoping that all those flickering lights that I saw on the bridge would somehow make it across before the ship struck. I mean, it was just so painful to watch. But let's talk about how government has responded. Laurie, I'm going to give you the first word on this. How has government responded to this tragedy?
Well, we've seen the legislative session may be extended because of the interruption this caused, which is perfectly understandable. They have the Port Act, which they're working on passing, which would support workers that were not covered by unemployment insurance. Not sure what I think about that. And it helps businesses to fully retain their workers during this time until they get the port running again, and incentivizes companies to return to the same port instead of going to another port. But, you know, Andy Harris is proposing some things, which I think we need to, you know, he's the only Republican and representative in Maryland. And we need to listen to what he's saying, because I think he's got some important things that we need to, we need to try to recoup money from whatever sources we can before we think about taking money out of our pockets as taxpayers. And I think we should focus on the $100 million to clear the port. That's the thing we need to focus first. And I think they need to get money to make the $100 million approximately that would be needed to cover that. But, you know, I think really we shouldn't be jumping to say, oh, we'll pay for the whole thing, you know.
Well, but don't you think government has responded appropriately in trying to help those affected by the tragedy?
Well, of course I do. And I think a lot of it has to do with we're a blue state. And I don't think this would have been happening so quickly if we were a red state.
Well, you know, let's leave the politics aside on this one. Maricé, it's rather impressive that already they're able to start clearing channels for shallow boats with a shallow drift to enter the port. They've opened up 2 lanes. So is this a signal that government is responding in an appropriate manner?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Casey. I couldn't be more proud of our governor, the mayor of Baltimore. And I actually agree with Laurie in terms of it's not a coincidence that when you're in the same party, and unfortunately that's, you know, why our politics are broken in the United States. You know, the ability to work with the White House so quickly, so swiftly, with you know, Secretary of Transportation Buttigieg, and, you know, and all the different bodies of government that are being involved, the U.S. Coast Guard.
I think you're forgetting the Corps of Engineers. They're doing a hell of a job.
I was getting there.
They're doing a hell of a job.
They're going to be doing a lot of work.
I was getting there. I was getting the Coast Guard, the U.S. Corps of Engineers, the Maryland Department of Environment, the Maryland Transportation Authority. I mean, it's been a phenomenal synergy in terms of getting all of those different bodies to work together collaboratively, and not just egos and saying, you know, and people tooting their own horn. I think the human loss of it, I don't see a lot of people talking in the mainstream media about the immigrant workers, the 6 families that are going to be affected. And I think that Mayor Brandon Scott responded, you know, I think appropriately. I mean, you know, it's a $300,000 fund that will benefit those families from this loss, but then also addressing the issues that are going to be faced by the 15,000 idle workers since the port's been closed. So I'm a proud Marylander, and I couldn't be more proud of our elected officials for making those efforts happen.
I mean, while they have been able to recover some of the bodies, there's still 4 missing workers that have not been recovered, and we shouldn't forget that their loss and the fact that they're involved in all of this.